Hello there, I'm James.
And I'm Emme.
And welcome back to the Bestiary, Monster Manual A through Z. And our guest of the week, Emme, is...
It is the Cyclops!
Yes, of course. The one-eyed giant of myth and legend, and something that guy down the pub mentioned one time, but you weren't sure really what he was going on about.
D&D monsters in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, and the Cyclops is pretty straightforward. It's giant, it hits hard, it's pretty dumb, as you might expect, though, stat-wise, intelligence of 8, so not super dumb. Wisdom of 6, though, so maybe kind of like an inability to appreciate different perspectives.
Yes, that low wisdom is really where the Cyclops gets caught up. They live very simple lives where they aren't interacting with a lot of people that aren't Cyclopses. They're very far removed from other societies, and it's not so much that they're unintelligent, like you were saying, as much as they just haven't encountered a lot of bigger concepts as far as larger societies go, which means that they're pretty easy to talk around, which really ties into their mythic origins.
Yeah, and actually I have a lot of time for the clear amount of love that went into writing this monster for 5th edition D&D. It references in the section that talks about that they are unwise. It says that although they are a terrifying threat in combat due to their size and strength, they can often be tricked by clever foes, which to me at least is an obvious reference to Odysseus and his talking about no one and the sheep, etc. You know the story, or if you don't, you should.
Yeah, definitely.
Learn the classics,
read that one. And you can really, I think, as well in the art, see that classical design as well. If you look at the style of his boots and the style of his jewelry, they're very simple in design, but you can really see that old school mythical root, even in his design alone. Yeah,
very thankful placing of his left leg there so that you can't quite see up the loincloth.
Yeah, that loincloth is flying up very high, isn't it? I wonder if some artist snuck that in just to give us a giggle. And if so, thank you. You definitely made me laugh.
We appreciate it.
The expression on his face, too. There's something that's so indicative of his personality about it. The way his face is being held. He's going after you. He's a little bit confused. You can tell he's more upset, which is something I know they talk about in Unwise, too, is that if they do learn that they've been fooled, they do act with a lot of anger. And you can kind of see that if I had to throw down a bet, that's what's happened, and that's why this guy's coming after the unfortunate person just out of frame with the terrible view.
Yeah. Simple, brutish. In a couple of ways, I think a little more complex than perhaps we're giving them credit. They are non-religious or a-religious. They don't care about gods or rituals or anything like that. But at the same time, if somebody comes along that sort of is like a powerful enough spellcaster or cleric or something like that, they could be led to believe that this individual is divine in some way. I think perhaps that sort of simple nature allowing a bit of flexibility almost, strangely and somewhat ironically.
That's a very interesting way of putting it, especially considering at the beginning they talk a lot about how, of the description in the beginning, I should specify, that they do respect supernatural areas and areas of power, even though they're not particularly religious and don't have any rights or anything like that of their own. But they are very in tune to the fact that the world is larger than them, if not physically, emotionally. And so they are aware that there are things that are super powerful that are maybe a little bit beyond them, and they have a lot of respect for them because they might interact with their daily lives. If it's a threat, they're going to avoid it. If it gives them power, they're likely going to be drawn to it. So encountering a person of power, even though they might not necessarily understand it on a more complex level, they do respect that it is a powerful thing.
Yeah. And speaking of powerful things, for such a a terrifying creature, a thing that really makes me kind of just kind of have this oh bless moment is in their stat block the poor depth perception trait.
Oh gosh. Okay, here's the thing. I'm going to share with you, internet. I have a lazy eye. I've had a lot of therapy to correct a lot of it. I actually have pretty good sight out of that eye these days, but I by nature actually do have poor depth perception, and so I relate to this. If people try to throw things at me, I can't really catch it all that well, you guys. So I feel for this monster.
So yeah, if ever in the future I or anyone else needs a rock thrown at something more than 30 feet away,
I'm gonna have disadvantage.
Don't ask Emmy.
Please don't. Thank you so much for joining us this week on The Bestiary. Have you ever encountered a Cyclops in a ruin? And if so, how did you trick your way out of the situation? We'd really love to hear about it in the comments down below. Please give us a subscribe and hit that bell. It really does help us out. Join us next week when we are talking about the Dark Mantle. And here are some more videos.
I see.
Woo!